John's not gonna be here. No, John's out of town. Leo's out of town. Probably working.
Yeah. I hear a band and I'm very
I
happy.
picked a good meeting. Yes, there's not much on it.
Was that better?
They picked a good meeting to miss. Not much on the agenda.
Go for one of the records like in the old days.
Yeah, we did.
Just give me that one. Yeah.
We know all of you.
These recaps for John Wall. Zoom in.
So maybe. Oh, yeah. Everyone's saying about their audio.
Council Bill.
Hello,
Very well.
Yeah, all right.
Improvement.
Yeah.
The new system, so.
It was. It was really fun. It's been super enthusiastic.
Saw you chuckling at the end down Main Street. It's a little easy.
Well, I told them to come down.
How's
there.
your garage
They
coming?
just kept coming to me.
Good. Yeah, do a drive-by. Come on.
Whatever, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
See those
And I
images.
just understand.
It's a really slow start with the foundation and the inspections, the slab, and all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Who's your
Really
contractor?
good though.
I've
What's that?
gotten
Were you
lots
contractor?
of compliments about, we'll do it.
Quick.
You guys, Daryl and girl.
Some guys running off the street.
But it was there for them.
It's all-
It was 3 days ago. And the car festival people were excited for that.
Both.
And then.
What's that?
I've heard both things.
Yeah.
Doing
Some really good guys. Smart.
about not having any
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah, so it ended up being.
And we run watching lumber prices every day. How much is a 2x4? How much?
We have troops over.
It's common now.
Yeah.
It's- I was
It's
ready
improved.
today. Yeah.
German.
It's still inflated from where it was 2 years ago, quite a bit,
Yeah.
but better than it was 2 months ago.
We're already an empire.
But I can take one project that,
We're already, like it
if I
happened.
can double the cost, from 100 to 150,
It's just sad that.
the last year, that's terrible.
Yeah, we did it for 20 years.
Yeah.
I know. It makes me count my blessings that we're here.
Taste of Harbor. August or September. And then Harbor starts, which is like January.
Really nice. So.
That
was great.
That's my pitch.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you do, just buy tickets, work on the table,
What is it?
and we'll put you
My
at,
work order doesn't really say what was wrong.
We've had.
what if we get is,
Good work.
so it's a way better deal.
Courage. And
And then trades are separate.
It's really not.
Yeah, but they're inexpensive, mixed drinks are $8.
I think they only have one.
Craft beers and all.
We were still, so have one.
We haven't done that yet.
We
That's
drive
coming
around,
up
we drive
next
around
week,
the
so we're
block.
gonna start that
We
goes next
we did it
time.
down closed downtown.
Yeah.
Closed down the town. We drive by there,
Like,
and it's like,
kind
they
of
did something.
those numbers. Also easy,
Just to let you know.
convenient, parking is convenient.
All right, everybody, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. All rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Nick, can we get a roll call?
Yes, Al Dyka. Here. Nancy Rondell.
Here.
And Matt Mugera.
Here,
We do have a quorum, barely.
good. That's all we need. All right, like to open the floor to citizens' comment. If there's anything you'd like to speak about that's not on the agenda. And, yes, just state your
Hi,
name and
I'm
address.
Little, and I'm the president of the Women's Club. We're a 501c3. And since 1985, the Women's Club has donated well over $300,000 to local charities, including a lot of money to the Harbor Springs High School students from scholarships. We no longer can do our art fair in a job where we earned a lot of money. And so you allowed us to sell some of our raffle tickets during street music in front of the bank. And I'm asking you if this week we can move our table down like by the New York or down in that area. And also if during sidewalk sales, we can be by the bank and selling our tickets. We have about maybe 200 tickets more to sell of our 2,000. So we've done pretty well.
So I got an email earlier, and just because it's a council approved the location, I figured it would come. Just ask. I see no problem with it. I don't.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
fine.
and I say Thursday, the street's closed off.
Thursday is
For street music, the street's closed off. The
I
stage,
was thinking we could put a table there somewhere.
yeah,
Somewhere, okay,
why it's closed. All
okay, thank you.
right,
Thank you.
If you get the chamber some information, we can also put it in our newsletter and publicize it.
Okay, well, we're just about done with selling the tickets, but I can let you know
Okay.
what the results are, but September is when the raffle's gonna happen, so it's winding down, but thank you. Next time we'll remember.
all right. Anyone else for citizen comment? Sir?
So I was just gonna say, thank you to the city and Rachel or whoever painted the picnic tables at the beach. They look great.
Thank you. I'll figure out who did it.
That'd be neat.
My name is Phil Carrot and my wife Tamara, and we just wanted to make some positive comments on the Harbor Light front page article last week about the dog park. We have a new dog, 6 months old, somewhat well behaved, but on a leash. And we have enjoyed the dog park. My sisters had a dog. Let me back up. We are residents during the summer, we're resorters. We live in Weequatonsie, and the cottage has been in our family since it was built at the turn of the century. So my positive comments are that we think that some of the comments were off base in the fact that we never see a traffic issue. I'd have to defer to the chief. And we don't see dog fights. We have, maybe my wife has seen a little bit of dog stuff on the beach, but for the most part, it's cleaned up. It's the only dog beach that we're aware of in the neighborhood. And of course, the object, I think the comment was made that people are coming in from out of the city. And we take deference with that because the city makes its revenue off of sales tax receipts, if I'm not mistaken. And no, or this
We make our money off property taxes.
100%. So where does the sales tax go?
State.
We don't have a separate city
They need
sales
to get a
tax.
piece of that.
I tried.
I agree. Anyway, enough said. I just want to give a positive comment to the dog beach. My sister's been coming here with dogs and since 91, and it's always been available. It's the only place in this park that you can use with a dog. Sturgeon Bay is off limits, of course, private beaches are off limits, Wee's off limits. So where do you go? Anyway, that's my comment. I just wanted to make a positive referral to it.
Thank you.
Anyone else for citizens comment? Excellent. Anything on the computer?
Nobody on Zoom and nobody on YouTube.
So we'll move right into the consent agenda. Everyone happy?
I'm happy, very happy.
Everyone in the audience happy? I'll make a motion to approve of the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Too fast.
Nancy Rondell.
Yep.
Al Dyke.
Yes.
Matt O'Gara.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent. Jeff, you're up.
Zoning Administrator's Quarterly Update.
I won't go through everything I have on here. I'm assuming that you guys have read most of it, but one of the things that I do want to touch on is the extended work that's gone in on the short-term rental project. That's probably been the most vocal discussion that I've had with anything in this last quarter. Even though realistically, it's a minority of properties that we're really having conversations about. Last year, we received a lot of complaints regarding one property. This year, we're receiving a lot of complaints about another property, but realistically, it's just those one, properties each year. But when we get complaints, there's a lot of complaints about that. So unfortunately, we're finding from talking with other communities, they have just as much problem as we do in following up on enforcement and just the timing of how long it takes to get through that process. We're looking at other communities and what they do to see if there are better ways that we can expedite this. Also, we have our public session that we're going to be having on 24th to get some more information from the community and potential ways that we can further modify our language and our requirements for short-term rental based on what the community would like to see. Does anybody have any other questions about anything on the zoning report?
Glad you're studying that.
Can you tell me when we'll know more about the properties that letter went out to, the ones that aren't licensed? That Harari, is that how you say that?
Yeah, Harmari is the organization. So they sent out their first letter in February. And based on that, we processed, we've received approximately 50 short-term applications that we already have registered. We then worked with them to put out a second letter, which they found an additional 30, approximately 30 that had a license the year before, that still had listings on their website that we reached out to say you need to reapply for the following year. We found an additional 9 that had never had a license before that had listings. One thing that we are finding with that, and it's a wonderful service. We're really getting our money's worth out of that, and we willing to pay for the cost of that service. The one thing that we are finding some of the hiccups in that. I talked with one person where the previous owner last year had listed their home as a short-term rental. And they've since sold that property and a new owner is living there and has it as their principal residence. But the old owner never took down the listing and it's still an active listing, but you just can't book any dates. So the new owner has tried to contact, I can't remember if it was VRBO or Airbnb, but because they're not the owner of the listing, they won't take it down, they won't remove it. So we're making notes. There's the ability in this software that Harmari has where we can kind of note some of these things. So of those approximately 40 second round letters that went out, I already know about 5 of them that we know they're not active listings. We are processing those, and I would say if we'll have an updated list of the active listings where we've received applications within the next week or so. And then at that point, I'm going to do a second mailing of my own to those properties that we know have listings out there that just have not contacted us, that we need to get this taken care of. Because I think that's the main goal, is at least having a contact person that we can call and say there's an issue. Because on some cases where that's happened, they've quickly addressed the situation. So.
Thanks, Jeff.
If you said you had just a couple properties where they're consistently there's complaints on, what's the criteria to remove their license? Like if we just pull a license and say, nope, can't do it anymore.
It is a good question, and we can't just pull the license. We have to take them to court. And generally speaking, from what I'm finding with talking with other communities, the court won't just say, you're right, take their license away. They'll say, shape up, and they'll give them a second chance. And then generally after you've had one or two opportunities where they haven't done that, then you can say to the court, we'd like to pull that license. We do have a process where we actually have a property that we're going to be reviewing and having a local hearing to discuss, potential. We do have the opportunity to fine and do a suspension, I believe, at the local level. I don't think we have to go to the court for that. But it's unfortunately kind of a lengthy process for some of this stuff.
Well, there should, but there is some short-term penalty, you just said. But
Yes.
the gauntlet should come down, okay, we're starting the process, you're gonna go to court, da, da, da. And the neighbors are just sick of it.
Yeah, we are, unfortunately, it's not something that moves as quickly as we would like, but we are going through that process on one property right now. Hopefully we'll, have this amended and fixed in some way.
Threaten them or starting the court process. Just curious what.
No, they're just gonna have a hearing. It's
Well-
not going to court yet, right?
Right, we're having a local hearing of,
That's number one.
that's the first step of the process.
As long as the process is started.
And Jeff, can you suspend their license? You maybe can't completely pull it, but if you have a hearing and you tell them obviously what the complaints are, and then they have trouble again with it, can you temporarily pull the license? I mean, how do you stop?
I think the ordinance is phrased that the first one you can suspend first hearing for 30 days. Then the second, when you have a second hearing, then you can suspend for up to 60 days, I think. But you can also, at any time after that, try to take them to court. But that again is what we run into, what other communities I've run into is lengthier process. Or by the time you take them to court, as Jeff had seen in other communities, the season's over, short term is over, and then there's no real issue there to be.
So if you suspend the license, does that mean they can't
They
rent
can't
it?
rent out during that 30-day
During
period.
that
It's
30
just
days.
suspended.
Okay.
Well, that's painful.
Yeah, I mean, that
That's-
should make an
yeah.
impact on somebody, I would think.
That's probably very impactful on their business, so.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like us to be aggressive in that enforcement.
We've had some chats with some other communities, Boyne City, for instance, City of Petoskey. I know, Victor, you've reached out to some of the townships. Yeah.
Traverse and West Traverse.
I think one thing that's been pretty consistent throughout, and each community is handling it in different ways, with various levels of success. But I think one thing that's been consistent is only have regulations on the books that you truly want to enforce. Some communities have overreached with that, and it's difficult to bring forth that level of enforcement if you don't have the staff. The second thing, though, is when you see an issue, address it as quickly as possible, kind of bring the hammer down. Because that word travels, other people hear, oh, they don't tolerate this. But unfortunately, with some of that, it is a process that can take some time.
Yes, sir.
I'm for,
Very nice.
I'm curious, have we shut anybody down? Have we said somebody to stop? Are we just, who has the power here? The state, the county, you guys? Who has the power?
City clerk.
Well, this is all in our city code. So at the local level, Nick is the city clerk. This is under his purview. I assist him in processing and working with this as much as I can. We have various abilities here at the local level to provide enforcement. Ultimately, though, some of that enforcement on our behalf needs to go to the court system.
Can we take anybody to court?
At this point, no, we have not had a situation that was bad enough, but we are in the process on one that, if they don't change their ways, it may end up there, yes.
Any more thoughts on a moratorium? We've got 4 properties for sale right now on Summit Street. I'm just thinking about people out there thinking, ooh, this would be a great short-term rental. And so somebody buys a house and then you say, oh no, it's not gonna be anymore. Like, is that gonna get the city in trouble? Or like, is it better just to hold off until we figure out what we wanna do with it long-term?
I think that we have this short-term rental, the meeting next Tuesday. I think it'd be valuable to see what input we get from that, and then take that to the planning commission and see how they want to integrate that into the master plan, or if they recommend more urgent action to council based on that. Moratoriums mid-season are really kind of tricky ones, I think, legally to get involved in with short-term rentals.
I guess I'm thinking about issuing any more licenses from that standpoint.
The problem is that the licenses we're going after right now are ones that are already probably operating as short-term rentals. We're just trying to get them to pay up for their license that they haven't applied for. I don't think it would be fair in the middle of the season, just my opinion right there, to issue a moratorium. I think it'd be something that once we go to the planning commission with this information we get from the short-term rental public forum, then we make a decision on how we want to proceed. I think it's the wisest way to go forward, the least pushback, especially because we're in the midst of we're almost there with the master plan. We're almost at the point where we're going to get our goals solidified, and this could be an integral goal to the master plan, the housing section. So
Where are we with the state, with the bill that was, what happened?
it's still there. I know, Jeff, you looked at it.
I'm checking it every couple weeks or so. It's one of them, I think, is sort of stalled. There's one bill proposed in the House and one in the Senate.
Right.
And I believe it's the House bill that has kind of staggered a little bit. It was referred to committee and it's kind of sat there. The second bill has been referred to committee and then it was referred for a second reading with updates. It's been referred back to a committee and I think referred for a second reading. So it's making headway and it has a lot of people that are backing it. There's a lot of rental management companies, short-term rental property owners and whatnot. It has a lot of backing. I think it would be pretty difficult for us to manage short-term rentals at the local level if that passes. Basically, it creates that short-term rental use where right now it's viewed as a commercial use of a residential property, which helps enable us to have these extra regulations. If this passes in its wording at this time, short-term rentals would be deemed a residential use of property and a by right use, which would make it very difficult for us to have very much enforcement above and beyond any enforcement that we have on other residential properties. So we are monitoring that. We're keeping up on that. I know that our local representative is involved and kind of has our back on this. They're looking at, I think, and this isn't something new, that we've seen this new bills submitted with this kind of a topic every year for at least the last 5 years. Normally they get to a certain point, local municipalities come out and say, this would really harm our ability to have any local control. And it's usually died at a committee. This year it's getting a lot more push to have progress here. So I think they're looking at not necessarily stopping it, but adding more language that would still allow some level of local control.
What's the municipal league's position on this?
I believe they've come out in favor of the townships and the cities, stating that keeping the ability to have some level of local control is what's best for the state of Michigan at this time.
And they have offered some compromise draft language to the legislature, and I don't know if they've compiled it in a new bill, but they have offered alternative language. So, good. Oh, you're moving along with that.
Moving on.
I thought you meant moving on.
Yeah. Anything else for Jeff?
No.
What does the license cost?
$250.
And we have to make sure that the cost of the license doesn't exceed our cost in monitoring short-term rental use. I know we've had some, requests to increase that cost of that license to make it a little bit more difficult. We have to be careful on that because we can really only charge a fee for what our, ability is to manage and how much our cost is to manage that. So.
Are you coming to the meeting next Tuesday night? Yeah. Okay, good. That's where we can have a two-way discussion and throw around some ideas and put some proposals together. So I should sit down and. I think it'll be more satisfying.
No, it's all good feedback, but I think we'll have a real good opportunity to gather a lot of feedback from a lot of people and take that to the planning commission where we can incorporate that in the master deed, maybe even recommendations to city council for further ways that we can amend our current license language and ways that we're monitoring.
Thank you.
Nothing else, let's move on to budgets.
Budget update, yeah, so we are, it is a little bit over halfway through the year, and budgeting season doesn't really start for us till November. Well, October, we kind of start with the capital improvements plan, but kind of want to give an update to council. I've had different questions from different council people about our budget, as well as about the Headley Amendment, and this is really our last, opportunity to kind of objectively put out objective material through video and these meetings. So it's really our last opportunity to talk about Headley here openly, at least from city staff perspective. And just wanted to give an overview of our budget because that's where there's been some, questions about, why our expenses have been going up and, where our revenue's at and how they get there. So Nick and I kind of worked on this a little bit, and I'll just run through it really briefly. And then if you have questions about anything, please feel free to ask us. I can't say we have all the answers because there's a lot of history and of trends, but we've kind of did some digging over the past 10, 15 years to see where trends were going. And so we hopefully can give you a good overview of what's happened. So if you're looking at the year-to-date expenditures, we're at about 56% as of July 31st, which is, on par to meet our expected expenditures for the year. So we probably are not going to go over. We have done most of our projects, the Marina Park, pickleball court upgrades, except for the resurfacing aspect of it. But we did receive donations, which helped counterbalance some of that. And then the resurfacing of the Methodist Church parking lot, which is a public parking lot, as you all know. We also potentially, or we should be soon getting that $125,000 from the American Rescue Act, which would put us, at a substantial surplus for this year, which is a good thing. But, waiting to see that money.
We have to spend that money and document what we're spending it on. So, it's an opportunity to do something that we normally wouldn't do.
So we'll probably see all in all by the end of this, unless barring some sort of an emergency, a surplus at the end of this year because of that. But that's knocking on wood. So as far as revenues, in the past few years, I'll say in the past 7 or 8 years, there's been very little variation. It relatively stays stagnant. From 2012 to 2015, they were essentially stagnant. We received then $100,000 increase in 2016. So in the next 3 years, it was stagnant or slightly decreased. And then in 2020, we've seen another $100,000 jump in tax revenue. And then again, our expected tax revenue for 2021 is about the same as 2020. So you see a constant, a relative stagnant property tax value revenue, and then you see a jump, then you see some stagnant, revenue growth, and then a jump. So it's not this even steady growth, and that's because of Headley and Proposal A. Other revenues have, either decreased or not significantly increased. 2019 received $80,000 in interest. Interest rates were awesome. Now we're looking at under $20,000. Interest rates are really just bluntly, they're just crap, right? So So that's, from 2019 to 2020, we saw a $60,000, drop in revenue just for interest. We've increased our administrative fee revenue by $100,000 in 2020, 2021. But those administrative fees are what we charge to other funds for the city staff to administer those fees. That has the effect though of taking some money away from those other funds. So it has this, it's good for the general fund, but, take $10,000, $15,000 from the waterfront fund, 10, 15 from the electric fund, that, because of our administrative fees. So it harms those a little bit. So it's not really a revenue, it's just a revenue to one fund. We also several years, and this might have been several decades ago, one of the previous city clerks put a DPW administration expense in the general fund, and that was meant to help alleviate the street funds. That amounts to $100,000 to $200,000 yearly expense in our general fund, but that was meant to alleviate the street fund. Well, now we're at a point where, all right, street fund is kind of okay, and our general fund is kind of tense. Maybe we look at what do we do with that DPW administration fee.
Right.
We've seen some more money from state grants in 2019 and 2020 than historically. Liquor license, though, revenues have drastically dropped, $38,000 in 2015, $17,000 in 2016, and then the last 4 years, $6,000 to $7,000. So you can't predict when you're going to get those liquor license fees, but these are small revenues that have decreased, small line items. But most of our revenue stream is normally variable from year to year. 1 year you might have a big grant, 1 year you might not have a grant. So we primarily depend on property tax revenue. I think about 2/3 of our revenues. I'm not sure, is that about right, Nick? 2/3 of our revenue is probably from property taxes.
If not more.
If not more, yeah. So 10 years ago, this is why we asked the council to approve the ballot, to go on the ballot to put the wording for the Headley Amendment override. Because 10 years ago, we could adjust our property tax rate up or down to meet the annual expenses of the city. But now we can't do that, and we're maxed out at that 5.75 millage rate. And when we do see an increased property tax, let's say there's a construction on a new property downtown or somewhere, you see that, that does increase the value of that property, but that has the effect of then decreasing the overall rate because that property is now paying more, everyone else is going to pay less. So that's the effect of Headley in Proposal A. But we cannot, of course, increase that without voters voting to uncap the millage. Expenses. So this is where really the question, this comes right. Where are we spending our money and how, and what's changed in the past several years? Obviously, several years ago, we could adjust our tax rate. So that kind of helped us keep revenues above expenses. So there are other reasons. We have inflation and increased costs of doing business, catching up on delayed maintenance of some infrastructure. There's a strong desire from the public as well as from council to increase certain services and improve parks and grounds in our buildings. Payments for previous bond projects. I know we're still paying on the City Hall Police Office project. I don't know if that's $70,000, $100,000, close. $80,000 almost a year is what we're paying on that bond project. And so then, of course, some slight increases in employee benefits and retirement payouts, which has been huge in the past 5 years. We've had several retirements from long-serving employees, police department, City Hall here. And so when those separation packages hit, they can be $30,000, $40,000 from your budget per person, depending on their service. So where have our expenses really, well, let's go to costs. Costs jumped $40,000 from 2012 to 2013, $100,000 from 2014 to 2015. Then you see more 6-digit increases throughout the period. So you see this little line graph here, and really about 2017, 2018, you start seeing increases go up. 2019, you see this big increase. That was a FEMA project. And then since then, we've been lowering, slightly our costs to try to get them to meet our revenue. As we kind of projected with this year, we projected no surplus, no deficit. That's where we kind of got at just under $3 million this year for expenses, and same with our revenue, expected revenue. So as I mentioned, most of these increases are related to the cost of doing business or necessary maintenance, which the FEMA project, again, that was a big increase for 2019. But some other major increases in costs over the past few years include, and I've listed here, one is legal services. From 2012 to 2016, our legal costs range from $40,000 to $60,000. However, since 2016-17, we've had, several lawsuits. We've had the tribal lawsuit, 3 lawsuits related to the IBS building, a lawsuit that popped up, and then we're constantly working on preventing other lawsuits that are coming to us, especially related to property claims. We're talking about 3 right now that, we have potential, I won't say claims, but that could potentially end up there if we don't address them. So we basically doubled our legal costs, and that's just when we got hit with 5, lawsuits, but that is one increase. Parks and grounds, in the last 3 years, we've budgeted $75,000 to $100,000 and more annually for maintenance and improvements to our parks and grounds. Then we have retirement, health benefits, and general employee costs, which have increased across the board for both the employee and the employer. So I think for retirement, for example, 12% of our employees' paycheck is going to their retirement fund. So that's, while that's their money in the future, that's less money that they're seeing in their take-home paycheck. We have to match that, and we're at 13%, I believe.
Right.
And that is to pay for the retirement of all these previous long-serving employees. So your former police chief, police officers who have served 20+ years, former city clerk, former DPW director who retired a while ago, electric supervisor, former city manager, a whole slew of people who have served for 10, 15, 20 years plus and got pretty significant packages. Brush and refuse, this is just a small, but it's increased $20,000 over the last few years. Police costs in the last 5 years, we added a full-time police officer, but also eliminated part-time hours. This added some costs. It provided the service that the council and public wanted, which was consistent 24/7 coverage. We also spent $60,000 on a capital purchase for the police department in 2020, which we had expected to cost $102,000. Kyle ultimately got that down to $60,000. But in the prior 10 years to that, we've typically spent $0 on capital purchases for the police department. So you see, it was kind of something that was needed. We haven't spent on it for 10 years. And we've also had 4 retirements from the police from 2017 to 2020. So that on average, that was each separation package amounted to $25,000. So even without increasing services or improving our parks and grounds, our revenues still won't keep up with the cost of doing business unless we delay, avoid maintenance, cut existing services, or increase our ability to raise tax revenue by capping the millage. Those are the 3 main ways I see as the only way we can make sure we have our revenue stay above our expenses. But even if we trim those services and reduce operations to keep expenses level or slightly reduced, the city will be confronted with a significant problem if, for example, the economy tanks and property values drop by 10 to 20% or more. If they do drop by that, our revenue would decrease by a proportional amount, and we're talking about cutting $300,000 to $500,000 depending on that decrease in property value from our operating budget. So that could be a significant blow to operations if we don't have the ability to adjust our tax rate. A solution often proposed when we get to this situation, which I don't think we're at, but a lot of municipalities try this route, is cut staff or reduce benefits. But really you can't do that without asking first which services you want to cut. Because when you talk about eliminating staff, you're really talking about what can't we do anymore with that staff member. That's really what it comes down to. So while it may be a sound solution in certain situations, that's the question you have to ask first. And oftentimes that's a policy question about where we want to see or where we want to spend our money in the town. So that's I caution you there. I also do not suggest really slashing employee benefits too much, because especially in this competitive market, it's really hard to attain and attract employees, and you don't want to drive the ones we have away. And I think right now we're at a pretty fairly happy medium, a balance with our employees and what they get and their workload and their work-life balance. So I think we're at a good spot, but you start chipping away at that, then you start running into problems. You start running into problems retaining and attracting people. So that's not where I recommend cuts. Where I would, if we ever got to that position, it would be a long, hard look at what services and operations that we want to spend and where we want to cut. That's of course if the Headley Amendment, the ballot initiative, does not pass. So that's something we might maybe not for next year, but definitely in the future years, it's going to become a question. So something that we needed to look at closely. And that's why I've just attached the expenses versus revenue chart up here, line graph, just kind of, so you kind of see what happened since 2007. Right here, 2008, 2009, 10, you had a little increase in expenses. Revenue dropped, and that was during the economy, housing market crash, and economy started to recover a little bit. And at this point right here is kind of the point, 2016, where we were unable to start adjusting our tax rate above what we need to. So, Nick, I don't know if you want to add anything to.
No, you're doing fine at this point. I'll field questions if there's any that didn't quite get touched on, but.
I've also added just a few sheets that we have put out for the public. There's the budget, but also just so people basically understand where their tax money goes. I explained this at the previous council meeting, and how the Headley Amendment keeps city revenue down. A little state, this is actually, I think, an MML pamphlet on Headley and Proposal A, the combined effects that it has on municipality. And then I had something else in there about, why, just explain to voters why we offered the Headley Amendment as an option to vote to override the Headley Amendment, and what our other options are if, these are all the options I believe we have, and, continue running deficits, which I don't think anyone wants to do. Cut services and operations from 2022, delay maintenance of certain infrastructure, avoid new projects and improvements, solicit donations for city projects, apply for more grants, pass a special millage, or uncap the millage rate. Now, all of these have pros and cons to them, right? So I don't feel like I need to get into details there. You probably have read this, but those are really our options. It's on page 47. Those are really our options, I think. But they all come with their pros and cons. And this is a good opportunity, though, if any council members or anyone from the public has any questions about the budget, where we're at with the budget, and anything to do with the Headley Amendment. Some of you mostly familiar faces, so you've heard this a lot.
I thought it was a good document,
Okay.
and I need to digest it more. We only had it since Friday,
Oh, yeah.
so I don't feel like I'm educated enough to talk about it tonight.
I just have a question about the percentage that Harbor Springs gets. Is that a set percentage by the state, the 24% in the school?
No, that's we just took 2020's tax bill, or was it 2021? I'm not sure, but I think it was 2021's tax bill, and that's based on the current rates that each entity is taxing right now. So if the county decides to increase their tax rate, then our percentage would be less than 24%.
Okay.
If we increase our tax rate, then our percentage will be more. So it's not mandated. It's just the actual for your average property. That's an average principal homestead.
That's information from the 2020 tax bill. We couldn't use 2021 because all of the millage rates have not been fully set for that yet. We still have the winter bill that will be coming out. And we wanted to be able to get the full picture of the full year, because some people collect millages just on a winter bill, some just on the summer bill.
Victor, I was just wondering what you plan to do with this document. I thought it was really good too. Like, would you mail it to every resident? I think a lot of people maybe don't pick up the newspaper and read up the article.
Which
Or go to meetings. Where does your tax money go?
That page there,
Mhm.
that goes right back to the basics of the whole taxing system. And I thought, well, this is pretty obvious, but then all the questions I've had in the last 6 months, it is not obvious
It's
to
not
people.
obvious if you're not.
So, I've had multiple people bring this Headley stuff in and say, I just paid you $20,000. You get to keep all that money. No, here's your bill and here's where it all goes. It's got to be gone out of here. And they still some people just don't believe that the city has to pay that out. So it's just a refresher on how the whole taxing system works at a city and township level.
But would it make sense to like put this in the paper? Is that what you were asking, Dana? Somewhere that
In the
people would
paper,
see
even
this?
just to do a mailing with
Yeah.
information about what happens if Headley doesn't pass. I think people don't really understand that.
Yeah, well, that's one of those things is we've been trying to get people to come to our meetings and we've literally had 0 people show up to all of our meetings for heavily discussion. So it's both at the lunches, I mean, except the coffee hour, we had people come to that one
We have to
coffee.
force them.
Yep, but aside from that, you know, we have one more nighttime meeting next week, the 25th, I believe. Like, yeah, he's like, what we have one more evening meeting on August 25th. Hopefully we get more people from the public to come.
Cocktails out in there.
Yeah.
Victor, I guess the bigger question is what can the city do to promote?
Well, that's the tricky
And when
thing.
does it stop?
So we are restricted by law from not promoting one way or the other the Headley event. We can't say vote yes, vote no. That's not our city staff. That's not within our purview. We can give them objective information. We have essentially 2 weeks left to do any sort of mass distribution or mass
Expenditure of city dollars.
city dollars on any kind of mass distribution of material that objectively talks about the issues.
There's so many seniors in the community. I almost think of mailing would be the most effective way to get the information in people's hands.
Well, we did to a limited extent. We didn't send out this document, but when we mailed out the tax bill does have an insert. And we try and fit as much information in there, kind of like a newsletter, with various things that are important going on in the community. And I believe that one of the sections on there was about a paragraph-ish was on the Headley Amendment and that we were having discussions.
Yeah, it
You might
was,
have gotten lost.
No, people received that and some were fine with it, others have it confused them some more, so it's, but again, that's one of we could look into that. One of the problems, of course, is, you know, we're trying to be as objective as possible and explain what the situation is. And, really, it's up to the community and the council members on their own to, if they believe one way or the other, to encourage people to vote yes or no. That's within your purview, but ours is to educate people what the issue is and what we think will happen objectively. This year, like I said, we're getting that surplus of money that, has to be used for specific things. So I don't think we're going to be in a dire straits anytime soon, but I do think that if the economy does crash and property values go down, we will be in a situation where we have to look at major cuts.
And that's more my concern, not the immediate needs, because the city still does. We try to keep a pretty tight rein on things, but if the property tax values do go down like they did in 2008, 9, then it could become an issue. And we talked about this, I don't know, 6, 8 years ago before I was here. And I found some memos from 2008 where it had been talked about that it was the general trend with this, and now we've gotten there where it's locked at 5.7% or mills. And we usually run between 7 and 9. So I'm just nervous looking forward. If property taxes really go down the drain, we're locked at the same rate.
Well, and another thing to keep in consideration, I think also is the state as a whole is, in the past few years, has been very pro property tax exemptions. So in the early 2010s, I think it might have been around 2012, maybe a little bit before that, we had the property tax exemption for personal property, where anybody with personal property totaling less than $80,000 has the ability to fill out a form and an exemption, and they no longer have to pay property taxes on that stuff that they have for their business. And I think just with that alone, we lost about 2% of our revenue.
Right.
And then I think it was a year or two after that, they instituted updates to the veterans exemption for property taxes, greatly increasing someone's capability of qualifying for that exemption. And if they do qualify, it exempts them from paying property taxes completely on their property. That is their principal residence exemption. So, and there's always talk of various other exemptions or modifying old exemptions to increase people's ability to qualify for them, especially in times like this where people have more need for money in their home. So that's just another thing that, you know, when you look at any one of them, it doesn't really hit us very hard. But when you say, well, we lost 2% here with this exemption, we lost another percentage or so here with this one, that starts to add up as well.
And this affects the townships, the counties, the cities across the board. And that's why Michigan Municipal League has gotten on board with this, because they're seeing it as a trend with cities and townships across the whole state. And there's no real solution, I guess.
Would it be difficult for you to put together another pie chart kind of thing for the non-homestead? Does the pie look different for non-homestead properties?
Yes, actually, was it like more like 10%?
Yeah, so non-homestead exempts a property owner, well, having a principal residence exemption exempts a property owner from up to 18 mils of school taxes. So if you put those 18 mils of school taxes back in that pie chart, it's going to make that red school area greater, and it's going to diminish the percentage that the city, it doesn't really diminish the actual monies that we get from those properties. It diminishes our percentage of that total tax bill. So yes, it would look a little bit different. I believe we went with principal residence exemption properties, because those are primarily the property owners that are going to be voting for this. So they see the information as it pertains to them.
So I believe that we have a responsibility to represent all the property owners, not just the voters.
We can absolutely add a second pie chart right on there that would include the non-homestead properties.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I can tell you, our thinking there was we didn't want to mislead when we put this out there, to just, if we put the other one on there, to people to think, oh, that they give us less than they actually do. So we didn't want people to get confused. That's why we put this one, because it's the most, I guess it was the biggest, and also represented the voters. But I do agree, we also need to understand how this affects non-homestead people as well. They should understand as well too, even though they don't have a right to vote, they should understand.
Do we have an email list of city residents?
No, that's something that since we started our new utility billing software, hoping that we could get a collection of that, at least for billing purposes, but we don't have a general emailing list. And that is something that we've touched on here and there, whether or not we should do that or not, and how to implement it. And we've had, people have the option to be emailed per the Open Meetings Act, for example, agendas for the meeting if they sign up, but we don't have a sign up for general city information. And that's something that I hope that this new system, but not enough people are yet using that billing system.
Yeah,
Not yet.
we're hoping.
But it's a good idea.
Yeah, it'd be a good way to communicate with the
Saves a lot of money. Rather than
residents.
mailing.
Save a lot of money in postage, paper.
But I do like the idea of putting it in the Harbor Light. If
Right.
they would use that. I don't know how they would do that, though. I know they've reported on it before, and if it would be an advertisement or.
That's why.
Small price to pay.
And I know that our budget's a large percent of the city overall budget. If you ever have a question about our budget, with Victor's permission, I'd love to talk to you. And I know there are some concerns about who we added and how many officers and this and that, and if you ever have a question, just call me. I'll be glad to answer you, but with Victor's permission.
And from the legal side, I'd just like to say we're hopeful that some of these cases are going to end. It's been pretty crazy. So,
And that is, you mentioned that, thanks, Jim. That's clarification. Not all those legal bills are necessarily going to Raymond Moore. They're for all the other legal attorneys that are involved in these cases as well. So just don't want to miscommunicate that as well.
Just a question on the legal cases. So if we win, do we still have to pay our legal fees, or is there something about like, I don't know, everybody
there's
pays
no-
their own fees?
There's no possibility of recovering fees under the so-called American system. There isn't, unless the other side was making a spurious or a claim that was without any merit whatsoever. So far, that hasn't been the case.
We can move on to City managers report. Down there. Kind of not a whole lot on the operations side to update council on. Our Parks Director has been using the Goose Scooper a lot, the machine we bought a lot more. And some of you might see her driving the tractor down State Street, so we're getting more use out of that, and it's been helpful. Pickleball court resurfacing project has been delayed still to maybe end of August, maybe the early September. A lot of back order of materials, so we're hoping they were supposed to get to that end of June, so it's been almost 2 months, but it's the market right now, it's tough. And then the city did contract with John Baker, who the Harbor Commission recommended for collecting the harbor plan data, and he was out there on the water this weekend. So he was excited, and we're thankful that he was up to it. So the Harbor Commission met, that was one of their discussion points. Also was some proposed updated language for commercial licenses, just small things regarding some of the aspects about, whether or not we should use wave runners and jet skis and kayaks and all these things, if we need to eliminate some language. So we're gonna revise that language in October and bring it back to council for approval. And also they recommended writing a letter to the Little Traverse Yacht Club regarding an issue with their course design. Those were the main things. I was at the Harbor Commission meeting because I was at Lansing for MPPA meetings, and those are back in person now, so we have to go in person. We can't do it virtually unless you're in a county with a declared emergency order. And the county doesn't have one of those, so those are monthly again. So I haven't been to one since February of 2020, so it's been a while. So traveling, so I was there Tuesday and Wednesday. Also had a brief initial discussion with the group Groundwork in Traverse City, talking about the local municipalities working with the tribes to some sort of solar project to buy some of our energy from. Sewer Authority meeting happened on Thursday, August 12th, and I think we're almost fully staffed there. We have two hired out of three.
2 out of 3, but the big one, the manager for the whole sewer authority is leaving in December. And the person to replace him is required by law to have a certain license, Class B licensure on a wastewater treatment plant. And we're running into some difficulties there. Mainly because of the housing situation up here, that we'd have to seemingly pay an exorbitant amount of money to get somebody with those credentials that could afford to come up here and buy a house. So we're working on
Yeah. Any questions about city happenings? We don't have another meeting until September 20th, so get the questions in now.
I can't afford that.
Yeah. Maybe we'll call a special meeting.
And those pay $6 for the special meeting.
Oh, really?
No.
Chief, did you want to add anything to your police report?
No.
No.
Do they get a copy of it?
I put it in their packet, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had the busiest July since I've been here, and the guys, Steve and Josh, affirmed that probably the busiest one we've had. We were very busy.
All right, I guess the next item is boards and commissions 5A. And this is just, I wanted to get ahead of this because it's a lot of people retiring. What we ended up doing was adjusted our terms. A lot of our members' term limits were just not consistently kept track of. So we pushed everyone to either December 2021, 22, 23, or 24. So we have kind of a decent cycle out of people and not having to appoint someone in October and then May. So it's kind of going to happen like this. So we have 12 board and commission members up for, their terms are expiring in December. 2 are on the planning commission, 1 on the DDA, 5 on the harbor commission, 2 on the zoning board, and 2 on the tree board. So historically, the reappointment process has been one where we've asked that person, all right, your term's coming up to an end. Do you want to serve again or not? And then if they said yes, we would just come here and say, all right, they want to serve again. And we would say, okay. And that usually happens in places in smaller cities and where there's may not be a lot of interest from the community or the community doesn't do a good job of advertising open positions. But But a lot of other communities also take a different approach, and that is term is up, your term is done. We're opening that term back up to everyone. So you can reapply for reappointment, but we're also opening up to other people. Then the legislative bodies would compare the qualifications between all those different members and make a choice either to reappoint that person or appoint somebody new. So I guess I'm asking this earlier because if we're gonna go down that second route, we need to, have some sort of plan because there's a lot of people, we want to get those applications out there to people. And people can apply anytime to serve on a board and a commission. However, it kind of makes more sense when there are board positions opening up that we let them know, because if we get it in May, something doesn't open up to December, they may not be interested anymore, and you have to keep. It's just more to keep track of. It's easier when that position is opening up. So I guess something, I don't know if council needs to make a decision tonight, but I think I want council maybe to start thinking about or talking about is, how do we want to go about this? Do we want to just keep on doing it the way we've been doing it, which is your term's up, do you want to be reappointed? Or do we say to the public, these many terms are opening, these many positions are opening up, please apply for if you would like to serve on the board, and then we reconsider. And if that's the case, again, what information does council want to see? We talked about with new applicants, what kind of information we want to see, and potentially review those earlier, not the day of or that we appoint them, but maybe the meeting before. But for people who have been serving, do we want to see their attendance records, or do we just, is there anything else we want to see from them? And at this point, I think it makes sense to open it up to other community members as well, because, we don't know what kind of interest is out there. I can't guarantee that there's a lot of interest, but I think it makes sense because, maybe some people on the boards feel just obliged to serve because, no one else is stepping up and they've been on the board for 10, 15 years and they're like, well, I'll just keep on doing this because I've been doing it. Everyone's different, of course, but so I just want to throw that out to council so you're aware that in a couple months, we're gonna have to be making some big appointments, so.
I like the second idea of advertising positions, get some new blood involved, because a lot of these people don't want to do it anymore, but they just keep doing it because no one else will. No, just keeps doing it.
Yeah, you guys throw me around, plug me in wherever you need.
I agree with you, Matt. I think it's a good, and I've talked to a number of people recently that are interested, that have asked about the application process.
Right.
And there are a lot of new folks in town that qualify, and I think, we're redoing a master plan, we're looking at the harbor plan, we're gonna do a parks thing. I think we need some new thoughts on all those things. So I agree with you, Matt. I think we should open it up. And if the folks there want to continue, they can do the same thing. They can apply, however that would be. I would love to know how long people have been on committees and their attendance record. I think that's important because there are, in all the bylaws, there are stipulations about how many meetings you can miss and all those things. And I don't really know if we pay much attention to that. I don't know.
This has come up before, and attendance, you can't really count that because it's a volunteer position. And things happen. I mean, there was some.
They can be excused, but there are some that just don't show up. Yeah, those are the ones that are the concern.
Right.
Because in the bylaws, it says specifically about excused absences and things like that.
Most of our board commission members are pretty good.
Yeah.
Most of them are attendance wise, but we do keep track of it. And it's actually quite easy for us to keep track. You just go back to the minutes and see who's been in attendance and who's missed. But we've been talking about that with the planning commission and other boards, and harbor commission, so.
Generally, it's something that comes up when all of a sudden you don't have enough people to vote to take action on something, or you don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
Planning commission.
Everybody was at the harbor commission the other night. Everybody was there. I was just like, oh my goodness. But I think it's important. I think if somebody's on something, they need to be there most of the time at least. And also the number of years they've been on. I think that's important to look at. If we're going to encourage some new blood, I think we need to know some of that.
So what I'll probably end up doing in late September, early October, start advertising for open position. I mean, people can obviously come in at any time and apply, but then at that time, I'll let these people know that their terms are expiring if they don't already know. Ask them if they want to be reappointed, if they want to resubmit for, and then put an advertisement out as well.
And the other thing, we did talk about it before, I had asked about knowing who we were looking at the meeting before we actually vote on it. I would love, especially with this many of them, to know that, and we'll have probably some new council people on too. So if we could know ahead of time so people would know, that would be helpful to me.
Maybe the second meeting in November or something. we
Yeah.
can talk
and then
about
vote
it.
on it.
Yeah,
That'd
it would be
great.
nice to get these people appointed in December, so
That would be great if we could do that.
I think that's a good plan.
So that would be with the old council.
Well,
Second November the second meeting in November would be new council.
it'd be new council.
Yeah,
So it'd give them a chance, if there's somebody new on it, give them a chance to at least meet somebody or
At
whatever.
least we could go through the list
Right.
and then make our decision on
That would be
the
helpful.
first meeting in December. Them all done.
Yeah,
all right, well, that's a plan. I'll do it. Oh, yeah, and I've attached, you see, this is my scheme. Green means they're not expiring, yellow means they're coming up, red means it's vacant, so. And if council members, if you ever want to see this at any point, just email me. There's a more full chart that actually shows who appoints and who approves. For example, the mayor appoints and approves the DDA. Mayor appoints planning commission, but council has to approve planning commission. And then for tree board, ZBA, and harbor commission, it's all council. So there's different mixes based on our bylaws for each different board on how the person gets approved. So just something to pay attention when we do appoint these people.
and the student slots don't count in the numbers, am I right?
They don't count, no, they're non-voting members, so they don't
Okay,
count.
so
in
they
those.
don't count, like if there's supposed to be 9 on a student, make that, okay.
That's all I have.
All right. Anything else, Nancy?
I don't.
Good.
No.
Chair, one more thing.
Yeah.
Just since Bonnie's here, I just want to give kudos to her. I mean, she's done great for the DDA. She works very well with everything. Like if you look at the car show, you look at the 4th of July parade and music in the street, she's rock solid. So, and she's very easy for me to work with. So I just want to give kudos to her.
Thank you, Connie.
Okay, bye.
She works hard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, hard.
Maybe a little. That's the minutes.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for coming.